As Australia honoured its fallen, both major parties read the room and dialed back the political posturing.
Australians won and free because of their sacrifice.
And for it, we are all deeply grateful, lest we forget.
But among the commemorations, it was hard to ignore the gathering storm in the Asia-Pacific. The Defence Minister using the solemn spirit of the day to beat hard on the drums of war.
We have to stand up with countries to stare down any act of aggression to make sure that we can keep peace in our region and for our country. Curling up in a ball, pretending that nothing's happening, that is not going to be in our long-term interests.
Yesterday, the PM responded to China and the Solomon Islands' new security pact by drawing a red line.
I share the same red line that the United States has when it comes to these issues. We won't be having Chinese military naval bases in our region on our doorstep.
Labor's stand-in leader Richard Marles today suggesting the PM abandoned his post.
If there is a Chinese military base in the Pacific, Australia at that moment is less safe.
The only way that you can preserve peace is to prepare for war and to be strong, not to be on bended knee.
Words are one thing, action is another. This is a government which beats its chest.
But given the eyes of the nation have been firmly focused on the past fortnight of holidays, are voters paying any attention?
No, not at all. Just living life.
It's probably a bad thing for me to say, but I just got my own stuff going on.
Don't watch the news, don't really pay much attention to social media.
The public holiday has caused a bit of a distraction and means that I'm thinking about going out more than staying home paying attention to that, right?
I think most people are like me, they've made their mind up a long time ago. And this is just, background noise.
Oh, the news? Oh, yeah, you probably got the wrong person there, haven't you?
So with school back and holidays now over, will the campaign kick into gear from here? Good to see we found lots of our viewers. Joining us is Labor MP Tanya Plibersek and Liberal Senator Janie Hume. Welcome to both of you. Sarah, I might get you to kick off because I know you had a question you were quite keen to ask about this.
Well, on a day like today where we're reflecting on the human toll of war, was it appropriate to see leaders from both of the parties really dialling up the war rhetoric? This is a question to both of you, but Jane, to you first.
Well, I think that most importantly, and this was reflected from all sides of politics, Anzac Day is a day for reflection. It's a day for acknowledgement that we are a very lucky and very fortunate country, but that luck and fortune doesn't happen by accident. It happens because many hundreds of thousands of Australians have sacrificed themselves to Australia's luck and prosperity, into their fortunes into the future, not just for their own generations, but for generations to come. And that's what Anzac Day is all about. Of course, there is a recognition that people have fought and died, so I would imagine that potential for military conflict is front of mind, and it is a lot of the questions that are needing to be answered are being asked on this very important day.
Tanya, there was some beating of the chest from the opposition today as well. Can you see that some people might have thought it was not an occasion where we want to see that sort of rhetoric being played for political gain, obviously, in the middle of an election campaign?
Look, I think Anzac Day is quite properly a very sombre day. It's a day when we reflect on the terrible cost of war and particularly on those who've made the ultimate sacrifice. Not just people who've lost their lives, though, those who've come home and dealt for years or decades with the aftermath of their service, their family members who've also been affected. So it is a day really to focus on the enormous cost of war and to thank people for their service. I don't think most parliamentarians were out today campaigning. I think most were like me, and I assume Jane, in their electorates, in their local communities. My day started at the dawn service at the Cenotaph, where I met Leonard McLeod, who was 96, and he told me about the fact that he signed up as a 15-year-old, and actually when the Army discovered that he was underage, kicked him out, so he signed up under a different name. He actually ended up signing up 3 times to serve his nation. And my day ended at the Coloured Diggers service in Redfern, where I heard from Tina Elliott, who's still serving in the Navy after 32 years, and about her generations of family's service to the Australian military, despite the fact that a lot of Aboriginal veterans weren't properly recognised for their service at the time.
Certainly
so
some
great
stories
stories a day really to focus on
today.
That. Yeah.
Now, Jane, back with you. The issue of the Solomon Islands did rear its head today. The Prime Minister's drawn a red line. What happens if China, the world's second most powerful military, crosses that line?
Well, I think that the language that the Prime Minister used demonstrates that while this is a region now of significant geopolitical instability, that Australia won't kowtow to a foreign aggressor, that we will make sure that we stand up and stare down any military aggression in our region. You know, China now has over around 20 points of military power in the South China Sea. That's of great concern, not just to Australia, but also to many of our allies, to the US, to the UK, to India, to Japan, and why it's so important that we stand firm with our allies and make sure that China understands that we will not tolerate military aggression in our region.
But Jane, they won't understand anything if all you're going to say is we're not going to tolerate it.
Well,
what does it mean? What does it mean to say there's a red line? Are you going to go to war?
Well, Walida, I think it's been pretty clear with the alliances that this government in particular have forged over the last few years, things like the AUKUS agreement, cementing the Quad agreement, using the Five Eyes security arrangements, that the entire country, not just the country, but the entire world stands firm against military aggression, whether it be in our region, whether it be in our region, or whether it be in Europe.
It's easy to say we have alliances, and it's easy to say we're drawing a red line, and we're going to be very upset if you cross it. But what? What do you do?
Well, I think that we make it very clear that we stand alongside our partners and our allies to make sure that military aggression is not encouraged or is allowed to take hold, particularly in our region. Now, you're asking me a question: am I going to declare war on a foreign nation on television? Of course not. Of course not.
I guess I'm just saying it's very easy to declare red lines and to say we're standing beside.
Well, I don't think it is easy. In fact, I think it's a very important thing that we do, make sure that we don't kowtow to a foreign aggressor. And, quite frankly, the Labor Party have made it very clear just in the last couple of days that that's exactly what Richard Marles, who is auditioning to be the next Defence Minister, has done. He's done it not just in 2019 in speeches that he ran by Beijing before he delivered them, but then he doubled down and put them in a book just last year. So I think it's very important that we make it clear that this side of politics will not stand up to military aggression
Tanya,
from a foreign power.
I'd better let you respond to that.
Look, there's just a bunch of blowhards, all talk. I mean, this is a government that has left us dangerously exposed. They've allowed China to sign a security agreement with the Solomon Islands on their watch, but even worse than that, I mean, we now have a capability gap, a gap in our defences because the submarines are late. They've spent $5.5 billion cancelling a submarine contract with France. Don't forget, there was before that a submarine contract supposed to happen with Japan. We won't be seeing subs for decades now. There's a delay with the frigate contracts. In fact, if you look across all of their projects, there's a cumulative 79-year delay with the projects they've promised.
Tanya, we were coming from behind.
They talk about what they're spending, they talk about what they're going to do, they don't
How many
deliver.
submarines did Labor commission?
You've been in
Zero.
government for
how
almost
many frigates
a decade,
did Labor commission?
Jane?
Zero. We are coming from so far behind because you allowed our defence spending to run down to 1.56% of GDP. We've taken it above 2%.
How long are you going to look around for someone to blame? You've been in government for almost a decade.
We're not blaming.
Take some
We're stepping up and making
Jane.
sure that national security is front and foremost in our interests.
In 20 years' time, we're going to have a submarine. That's great work.
As much as I've enjoyed this argy-bargy, we do have to go. Thank you so much for your time, Tanya Plibersek and Jane Hume.
Thank you.
Thank you.